The impossible revelation. For years, the alien queen had believed that humanity's bloodline had ended, that no more children would be born from her people, that the world would remain silent, and yet, one moment changed everything. It was a day that no one expected, least of all the queen herself. My daughter, who had always been called Barren, stood before her, her belly round with life, carrying twins. The alien queen had watched from her throne. The court silent as they waited for news. The queen had heard of my daughter's pregnancy, but she had thought it was a rumor, something meant to undermine her power. But when my daughter entered the grand hall, the queen could only stare in disbelief. There she was, a woman once believed to be incapable of bearing children, now standing tall, a mother, with 2 infants cradled gently in her arms. The queen's mouth went dry, and her heart raced. What was this? How could this happen? She had been told, for years, that no one, not even her strongest warriors, could escape the fate of infertility. My daughter had been called weak, a disappointment, yet here she stood, proving them all wrong. The queen's eyes locked on the twins, their small faces turned toward the crowd, their tiny hands grasping my daughter's fingers. How could this be? How could my daughter defy what the universe had written for her? The queen stepped forward, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. How is this possible? She demanded, her voice low. The room fell silent. My daughter's face remained calm, as though she had known this moment would come. I never believed the lies, she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of the truth. I was never barren, I just wasn't ready. The queen's heart skipped a beat. Her centuries of knowledge, everything she had known, now crumbled before her. The impossible had happened, and she could not explain it. The court was silent, no one dared to speak. They all watched the queen, waiting for her reaction, but she did not speak. For the first time, the queen was speechless. Her ancient wisdom could not explain what she saw. The air in the hall grew heavy, the tension thick. My daughter stood before the queen, unwavering, holding the children that no one thought could ever exist. And then, the alien queen did something unexpected. She stepped back, her hands trembling. She was the ruler of many galaxies, known for her power and knowledge, yet here, in front of her, stood a woman who had shattered the very laws of nature. You are a threat, the queen muttered, her voice filled with fear. Your children, your bloodline, it could change everything. My daughter did not flinch, she stood tall. It could change everything for the better, she said calmly. The queen's eyes widened. Was this what she feared all along? That humanity's bloodline would rise again, stronger than ever? No, the queen whispered, almost to herself, this cannot be. But there, in my daughter's arms, was proof that it could. The impossible had been made real. For years, my daughter had been told she could never bear children. She had been cast aside, a forgotten woman with no future. But now, she stood as a mother, a symbol of hope for all those who had been told they couldn't. And the alien queen, who had once ruled with unquestioned power, was left in a state of shock, uncertain of how to move forward. It was not just a child that my daughter had brought into this world, it was a new era. An era where the impossible was no longer impossible, where anything could be achieved if one dared to believe. And as the court watched, they knew that things would never be the same again. My daughter, once thought to be barren, had proven everyone wrong, and the alien queen, for the first time in her life, had to accept that she could not control everything. That day, everything changed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The truth unfolds. The room was filled with an uneasy silence, the tension in the air thick enough to cut through. The alien queen, still stunned, stood frozen, her eyes fixed on my daughter. My daughter, on the other hand, was calm, a peaceful confidence radiating from her as she cradled the twins in her arms. The queen's mind raced, her thoughts a whirlwind. She couldn't comprehend what she had just seen. For years, she had believed in the laws of nature, the rules of her people, and never once had she imagined they could be wrong. But here, in front of her, was proof that everything she knew could be shattered. Explain, the queen finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Tell me how this happened. Tell me how you, a woman thought to be barren, brought forth 2 children. My daughter looked up at the queen, her gaze unwavering, and for the first time, she saw a glimmer of doubt in the queen's eyes, a doubt that had never been there before. I was never barren, my daughter said, her words quiet but filled with strength. I was never unable to have children. It just wasn't the right time until now. The queen stared at her, disbelief still clear in her eyes. She had never been told that there was anything more to my daughter's story. All she had ever known was that she was marked, cursed even, as incapable. But how? The queen pressed, her voice more forceful now. How could the laws of our worlds be so wrong? What does this mean for the future? My daughter stood tall, her eyes holding the queen's gaze. It means everything can change, even the impossible can be possible if we choose to believe in it. My daughter's words hung in the air like a challenge the queen wasn't ready to accept. The queen, despite her centuries of power, her unshakable rule, felt something stirring deep inside her. It was not fear, nor anger, but something more uncomfortable, hope. For the first time, the queen's ancient wisdom failed her. She had always relied on the certainty of the universe's laws, on the idea that everything followed a predetermined path, but my daughter had just rewritten those rules. You were told lies, my daughter continued, and I believed them for a while. I believed I was not enough, that I was broken, but then I realized, I am not broken, I am strong, and I can create life. Just like anyone else. The queen's expression softened slightly, and for a moment, she was no longer the powerful ruler she had once been. She was a woman, vulnerable in her own way. She looked at the twins again, their innocent eyes gazing back at her. You do not fear the future, do you? The queen asked, her voice much softer. No, my daughter replied, I do not fear what's to come, I embrace it. The queen was silent for a long time, her mind spinning, processing the impossible truth before her. She had spent so many years believing in control, in certainty. But now, she faced a reality where nothing was certain. This changes everything, the queen murmured. The future is not as I thought, it is not as I planned. My daughter smiled, the confidence in her growing. The future is not yours to control, it belongs to those who are willing to change it, to those who dare to believe. The queen stared at my daughter, her mind struggling to accept the truth. The queen was used to being the one who held power, who decided the fate of others, but now, she felt a shift, a change she couldn't explain. You are not what I expected, the queen said finally, her voice full of awe and something else, something close to admiration. My daughter's smile remained steady. I never wanted to be what anyone expected. I only wanted to be myself. The court watched silently, their eyes fixed on the exchange. The queen had never been challenged like this, never had her beliefs been questioned so thoroughly, and now, she was forced to confront the truth she had long denied. The impossible had happened, and there was no turning back. My daughter, the woman they had all written off, had proven that anything was possible, that the future didn't have to be determined by the past. The queen finally took a step back, her expression hardening once again, but now, there was respect in her gaze. Perhaps, she said slowly, perhaps there is more to you than I thought. My daughter nodded, her eyes shining with determination. There is more to all of us than you think. The alien queen's past. The alien queen stood still, her gaze shifting between my daughter and the twins. Her thoughts were chaotic, her centuries of wisdom struggling to comprehend what was before her. For the first time in a long while, the queen questioned everything she had known, her mind turning to memories of her own struggles. When she was young, long before she became queen, she, too, had been called weak, just like my daughter. It wasn't something she often spoke about, but deep within her, those memories still burned. I was once told I would never be worthy. The queen's voice cut through the silence. They called me weak, incapable of ruling. They thought I was nothing more than a shadow of those who came before me, just a tool for their power games. My daughter listened closely, sensing the queen's vulnerability. She had never heard the queen speak like this, the woman who ruled over galaxies with an iron fist. Now, there was something different in her voice, something raw. The queen's eyes grew distant, as if she was lost in the past. I fought for years to prove them wrong, she continued, her tone tinged with regret. I fought against their expectations, against the idea that I was nothing more than an accessory to their power. I had to break every rule, challenge every belief, just to be seen as worthy. My daughter stepped forward, her eyes gentle yet firm. And now, you see that I've done the same. I've challenged the belief that I was broken, that I couldn't create life. I've broken that rule, just as you broke the one set for you. The queen's lips trembled slightly, a crack in her strong exterior showing through. Yes, she whispered, I see that now, but it wasn't easy. I had to fight everything, every word, every glance, every law, until I became what they feared. she turned her gaze back to my daughter. "But what you've done, what you've shown me, is beyond anything I could have imagined. You didn't just fight for yourself, you fought for the future. You proved that the impossible is just a word, a limitation that can be shattered." My daughter nodded, her gaze unwavering. "I didn't do this alone," she said quietly. "I did this for my children, for their future. They are my strength, and they remind me that there's no limit to what we can achieve if we believe in it. Just like you, I had to fight against the odds, and now, I will fight for them, for our future." The Queen's heart softened further, her pride no longer blinding her. "Perhaps, I've been wrong about many things," she said, her voice quieter now. "Perhaps, I've been too focused on control, on the need to dominate everything and everyone around me." The Queen looked down at the twins again, and for the first time, there was a sense of peace in her eyes, something she had not felt in centuries. "You've shown me that strength doesn't come from control, it comes from the courage to challenge the rules, the courage to change the future. You and your children will change everything." My daughter's smile widened, the weight of the moment settling in. "It's not just about changing the future. It's about making a better one where everyone has a chance to rise, no matter what they've been told about themselves." The Queen stepped closer, her presence towering over my daughter, yet now there was no fear in my daughter's eyes, only understanding. The alien Queen's voice was filled with respect. "Perhaps, the future does not belong to me alone, but to all who dare to challenge the limits placed on them." She paused, then extended her hand, a gesture that felt both strange and genuine. "You've earned my respect, and I will no longer stand in your way." My daughter took the Queen's hand, her grip firm but warm. "Thank you," she said, and with that, the Queen finally acknowledged that my daughter, once thought to be barren and powerless, had changed the course of everything. In that moment it was clear, the Queen had learned something she could never teach, and the future of both our worlds would be different, not because of dominance, but because of the courage to challenge the impossible. The court, still silent, now looked at my daughter with new eyes, no longer seeing her as weak or broken, but as a symbol of hope, of strength, and of the power to rewrite history. The challenge. The Queen's words had shifted something in the air, a shift that no one could ignore. My daughter stood tall, the weight of the moment still on her shoulders, but there was a new energy around her, something that had been missing for so long. The alien Queen stepped back, her face now a mask of uncertainty, yet, in the back of her mind, a challenge began to take shape. The Queen had always ruled with certainty, with laws and rules that controlled every aspect of her empire, but my daughter had shown her that even the greatest of rulers could be wrong, and now, the Queen could feel the tide turning. "You think that just because you've proven something that your bloodline is worthy, that everything will change?" the Queen asked, her voice sharp again, her gaze, cold and calculating, locked onto my daughter. "What if I say it isn't enough? What if I say I need more proof? What if I say your children, despite everything, aren't strong enough to carry the future?" My daughter's eyes narrowed. She was not surprised by the Queen's words. This was who the Queen was, a ruler who would not bend easily. "Then we will prove it," my daughter replied, her voice steady, calm. "We will prove that our bloodline is not only strong enough, it is the future of this galaxy." The Queen stepped forward, her gaze now filled with something darker. "Then you will face a challenge, a test that will prove your worth, your strength, and your children's place in this world." My daughter did not hesitate. "What is the test?" she asked, her eyes full of defiance. The Queen's lips curled into a slight smirk. "A battle," she said, "a test of strength, courage, and survival. You and your children will face my best warriors. If you can survive, then I will accept your bloodline as worthy." The challenge had been set, and the Queen had not expected my daughter to accept it so easily. My daughter's heart raced, but her face remained calm. "I accept," she said, her words echoing through the hall. The Queen's eyes widened. She had expected hesitation, fear, but she found none. My daughter was ready to prove that everything she had believed about herself, everything the Queen had doubted, was real. "Very well," the Queen said, "we will begin at sunrise. You and your children will face the warriors in the arena of trials. Only those who survive will be deemed worthy of the future." The challenge was set, but my daughter was not afraid. As the Queen turned and left the hall, my daughter stood with the twins, looking out into the vast landscape beyond the palace. She could feel the weight of the challenge, the weight of the galaxy itself on her shoulders. but she was no longer the woman who had been told she couldn't. She was a mother, and she had everything to fight for. She looked down at her children, their small hands wrapped around her fingers, and she knew what she had to do. "We will face them," she whispered, "we will prove that we are worthy of everything they said we could never have." The next day came quickly. The sun barely rose when my daughter stood in the arena, the cold air brushing against her skin. The warriors of the queen stood across from her, their eyes filled with contempt and disbelief. They had been told, just like everyone else, that she was nothing, that her bloodline was nothing, but today, they would see what she was truly capable of. The first challenge was a test of strength. My daughter was faced with a massive creature, one that could easily crush a person with its size. The crowd watched in silence, waiting for her to fail. My daughter gripped her sword tightly, her body tensing. She stepped forward, ready to fight for her children, for her future. The creature lunged, but my daughter was faster, her blade cutting through the air with precision. She struck the creature down with one swift motion. The crowd gasped, and for the first time, the queen's expression faltered. The second challenge came quickly after, a test of endurance. My daughter had to race across a field filled with dangerous traps, spikes that would impale her, and pits that could swallow her whole, but she moved with the grace and speed of someone who had nothing to lose. She was running not just for herself, but for the future she believed in. She leapt over traps, dodged the spikes, and reached the finish line in record time. The crowd erupted in applause. Finally, the last test was the most difficult, a challenge that pitted my daughter against the queen's most skilled warrior, a fight to the death. The warrior was strong, trained for years in combat, but my daughter was fueled by something stronger, love, hope, and the unshakable belief that she could change everything. The fight was fierce, but in the end, my daughter emerged victorious, standing tall, her breath heavy, but her heart unbroken. The queen watched from her throne, her eyes narrowed, but there was something else there now, something she hadn't expected, respect. For the first time, the queen knew she had met her match. The future of the bloodline. The arena was silent, the crowd still processing what they had just witnessed. My daughter stood in the center, bruised but victorious, her chest heaving with the weight of the battle she had just fought. The queen watched from her throne, her eyes hard, but beneath the surface, something had changed. The challenge had been met, and my daughter had proven herself in ways no one could have imagined. She had faced death, endured pain, and emerged stronger than anyone had ever thought possible. The queen stood, the sound of her heels clicking sharply against the stone floor as she descended toward the arena. Her steps were slow, measured, but each one seemed heavier than the last. She stopped just before my daughter, who stood tall, her body battered but unbroken. "You've proven more than I ever thought possible," the queen said, her voice quieter than it had been before. "You have proven that strength comes not from power, but from the heart, from the courage to fight for what you believe in, for your future, your children, and your legacy." My daughter's eyes never left the queen's. "I didn't just fight for myself," she said, "I fought for all those who were told they couldn't, for every person who was cast aside, for every woman who was told she was broken, for every child who was told they would never rise. This is for them, for all of us." The queen looked down at the twins, who were now quietly cradled in my daughter's arms. Their small faces seemed so fragile, yet there was a quiet strength in their eyes, a strength that echoed their mother's resolve. The queen studied the twins for a long moment, her gaze softening. "Your children," she began slowly, "they will change everything. They are the future, a future that cannot be ignored, a future that is worth fighting for." She paused, then stepped forward, her voice filled with respect. "I once believed that control was everything, that power meant dominance, but you've shown me that the true power lies in change, in the ability to break free from the chains of what was always expected. You have taught me that we are not bound by the past, but by what we dare to create." For the first time, the queen's tone held no hint of challenge, only admiration. My daughter nodded. "The future belongs to those who are willing to believe in it, to build it, no matter the obstacles." The queen's eyes softened even more, her earlier coldness fading. "I see now that my rule, my power, is not what defines the future. It is the people, the ones who dare to believe, to change the world, who will shape what's to come." She turned to the court, her voice rising with authority. "From this moment on, I will no longer rule with fear, I will rule with respect, and I will help build a future where all voices are heard, where every person has the chance to rise. The court erupted into murmurs, but the queen silenced them with a single motion of her hand. You, my daughter, have not only proven your strength, but you have earned the respect of all those who stand before you. You have earned your place in this galaxy, and your children will be the future of this world. The queen turned to face the crowd. I hereby declare that the bloodline of humanity, once thought to be weak, broken, and barren, is now a symbol of strength, hope, and the future. My daughter's eyes shone with pride, not for herself, but for the legacy she had just begun to build. The queen's declaration would echo through the galaxies, and for the first time, humanity's future felt certain. The impossible had been proven, the unbreakable had been broken, and the bloodline that had been dismissed, thrown away, was now the one that would lead the way. As my daughter looked down at her children, she knew the battle was only just beginning, but now, she had allies, she had strength, and she had the future on her side. And as the alien queen turned to leave, her final words carried the weight of everything that had changed. Go forth, and show the universe that there is nothing impossible, there is only what we believe, and what we are willing to fight for. My daughter smiled, a smile filled with determination. We will, she whispered, her voice unwavering. And the future, once uncertain, was now filled with endless possibilities.